Hey, morning, South Africa. Once again, a lot going on. Sorry, I can't see this thing properly. A lot going on in the political spectrum, and quite frankly, it's becoming very difficult to get shocked anymore when you read what is going on around us. You know, I read some interesting stuff again. I read that Zuma, Tseli, and others are wanting to put in an application to prevent certain investigations. And then I read that obviously we all already know the lies about the attaché that was supposed to go to America. And then I read with absolute shock and horror, except not really shock and not really horror, and I'll tell you now why, that Mr. Kuneni is found at the home of a person implicated in what appears now to be multiple murders, because the guns that were used in these murders are being linked to, I think the last thing I read, and I speak under correction, you're welcome to correct me, 10 other killings around the country. And this brings me to what I've been saying from the beginning, and it ties into what Neil de Beer has also been saying for years, actually, if you go back into a lot of his stuff, that we're dealing with a cabal. We're dealing with a system that is corrupt, and everyone within that system is feeding off the trough of corruption, regardless of what party they announce that they represent, or make us believe that they represent, So, I've been, watching a lot of different perspectives and views to try and get a balanced idea of what's going on. But I just cannot seem to shake this feeling that everyone behind the scenes is talking to everyone, and everyone is trying to figure out how best to play this thing as it gets further and further exposed. And, all credit to the man. This has all begun because of Mkonazi having the guts and the balls and to go onto a stage and say the things that he said at a press conference, which has now thrown a massive cat amongst a huge flock of pigeons. And, this morning I read that Ian Cameron is talking about this committee and that committee, and they're going to establish this committee and that committee. And for me, this story of all these committees, what is it with our obsession with having talk shops and indabas around things that are really quite blatant, I want to know why no one is really taking proper action. This is the thing, is that, me as just a layman, but a person with some type of moral integrity, I would have already put together a national investigative unit of independent investigators, along with people that I know without a doubt are untainted, and formed a national investigative team to start properly investigating and giving them the authority through Parliament to arrest whoever and wherever those investigations take them. End of story. End of story, and regardless of political affiliation and how much support they have and all of that, I suppose the real issue is if you start arresting people that have got millions of supporters and followers, that you're going to have a problem with, instability and riots and all of that. But, you should have already had in place an effective military and police force to combat that type of thing, so that you could effect the necessary arrests and prosecutions if they were to come. So what has happened is, it looks to me like the governing party has deliberately weakened the police, deliberately weakened the military, so that when they knew this time would come, that they would rely heavily upon their support base to create chaos and instability that no one could prevent. Should the time come when they're going to get ready for arrest and prosecution and all that type of thing. And I must say that has clearly worked in their favor, because it seems to me that people that can take the actions required are scared to take the actions required because they're worried about the fallout from the masses. But I feel like the majority of the masses of this country would support people being arrested and people being prosecuted, as long as it's apparent that it's not because of political gain, that it is truly because of crime, corruption, fraud, and these types of things. South Africans, I honestly, just to, be real with you guys again, I cannot believe the amount of people that are watching the videos that I present, because I'm just a South African guy speaking from a South African guy's perspective. But I speak it honestly from my view. And a lot of people don't agree with that view. That is their right. But it seems to me that the vast majority of people, even though they don't agree with my view, still watch it because they know it's honest. And this leads me to the understanding that this is what South Africans want. South Africans are hungry for honesty, truth, morality, and integrity. This is what they're chasing. This is what they're after. And if you want to get the South African public, the masses behind you, you need to start standing for this morality, integrity, and truth, regardless of vote counts and followers and all of that type of thing. This is what we want. This is what South Africans are hungry for. So, I'm very happy with what I'm seeing. But to go back to where I started this thing, now you find the deputy president of a major political party sitting in the home of a guy as the police arrive to arrest him, which is now multiple murders that are linked through these firearms. And, you then have to go back to what I've said all along and what Neil de Beer has been saying for years. You're dealing with a criminal, complete, total, the entire government from top to bottom seems to be corrupt and seems to be in cahoots with each other. The only thing that is separating them is the number of people supporting each one of these groups of dodgy individuals. I'm saying it again. We need to wipe the slate clean. We need a fresh perspective. We need people to bring in a new, uncorrupted, untainted, unaffiliated person to lead us into some kind of truth and some kind of honesty. Because currently, you can just see that it doesn't matter who they are, they're involved. They're involved in it. Everyone behind the scenes, this Brown, I can't remember his surname, now saying that he's an undercover operative and this and that. It just shows you the level of corruption that is at play, and that everybody, every one of them that sit in that parliament is somehow involved in this entire thing. They are all operating together. And as this thing gets deeper and deeper exposed, you're seeing it. It doesn't seem to matter which ministry or who's running it. There's something bad going on there. We need a complete clean out. We need a fresh, new government and system to come into power. I also want to say this, that although I love our Constitution, there's areas of our Constitution that have to be revised, because the criminal, organized crime element within our government is manipulating this highly liberal Constitution to the favor of crime, criminals, and corruption. There's things in that thing that have to be revised in order that criminals can get put back where they belong. I also heard yesterday that out of the entire Africa, South Africa's prison population has got the highest contingent. So countries like Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Mozambique have got anything between 500 to Lesotho, the lowest, 23 foreign nationals currently in their prisons. 500 being the highest, I believe, was the figure I heard yesterday, right? South Africa has got 25,000 foreign nationals currently in their prisons. 25,000. These types of things have to be revised. And if the government can't understand that their priority is their military, their border, and their police and their health services, then there's no moving forward. We need to secure our borders. We need to build our military. We've got millions and millions of young men with no work. We need to get those guys into our military, train them, put them on our borders, guard and protect our borders, train them properly, put them into our police, get our police back up to standard, train them, the young, millions and millions of young women and men, if they want to do it, train them up as nurses and officials, get them into our healthcare facilities, and use these prisoners that are sitting in our prisons, milking our system, to rebuild our facilities. Amen. Have a lekker day. I'll speak to you guys later. Cheers.